When you look at me, you see a white European Caucasian male. I'm not proud of it, not ashamed of it. It just is what it is, because underneath of that, I'm a human being. Now, that doesn't make me aware that because of my whiteness, I've been afforded a privilege that has gotten me to this place in my life, and for that I am grateful. But because I know that exists, I've always felt a responsibility and a calling to stand up for what I believe is the truth, what is right, and standing for my fellow brothers and sisters. Some of the best people that I've ever met in my life, friends that became family, you might call black, brown, whatever. But I don't see them like that. I see them as some of the best people I've ever met in my life. And so when I look at the conditions of this country, and not only the country, but the world, I can't help but become incensed at the conditions that these people who I consider to be my family live in. And it's much different than my experience. And if you're not willing to be honest with yourself and call it what it is, then I think that's part of the problem. We have to be honest with what's happened, not just within our lifetime, not just this country, but the world. How colonialism conquered indigenous people, and a system of white supremacy has been instilled in every government, every system, and every part of society since then. Now, some people might hear those words and take them as abrasive rhetoric, but it's indisputable fact. And I don't know what books are being read or taught from, but I know the texts do exist that will bring you to the realization of that fact. Now, just because my forefathers and people look like me made mistakes before I ever existed, doesn't mean that I have to harbor the guilt or the fear of what repercussions may be when those people who have been victim to that finally are starting to wake up and be privy to it. I'm not afraid because I'm human. And so is everyone else involved, so wouldn't we be fighting all together for the same thing? I went to DC this weekend to use my art to spread a message to speak on the evening before the Million Man March. And the next day I went to be a part of history because 20 years ago I was too young to even understand what was going on. It was an experience that I'll never forget. First and foremost, I was disappointed to find myself as one of the only white people of lighter skin that I saw there, aside from maybe technical crews and camera workers. And I thought to myself, isn't it amazing how there's not one person yelling at me, threatening me, giving me awkward stares? I was welcomed. And you see, it wasn't covered by the news media, and everybody can pick out certain segments, and I understand the background and history of Louis Farrakhan, the keynote speaker. But I didn't go there for Louis Farrakhan. I heard what he said. I heard the other speakers and speeches. And what I took from it was mostly a positive message. A message of taking responsibility for communities and deep-rooted issues from within, and then using the power of a collective population to actually do something about it. And my pictures that I've put up and the comments that have come in, I've been accused of being ethnically confused, fighting for the wrong sides, many different things. And you expect that when you put yourself out such as I do, and I've developed a thick enough skin to understand and not take it personal. But it was an impetus for me to sit down and record something, because I'm dumbfounded, absolutely confused at how some of these truths seem to be tucked under the rug by so many people. How can you say in 2015 that racism doesn't exist any longer? That because we have a black president, that it's standing on its last leg? How can you watch what goes on across the country and see how lives of people who have darker skin seem to be undervalued as compared to their lighter counterparts? Why can't you see this? It's obvious. And so a movement such as Black Lives Matter, I cannot stand when people sit here and try to justify replacing that hashtag with All Lives Matter. Of course, they all matter. That's the whole point. And it's because they all matter that people use a hashtag focusing on one group, because it's indisputable fact that conditions exist that could allow one to believe that theirs doesn't. And anyone that feels the inclination or the necessary action to be taken to replace that, you're part of the problem. There's something inside of you that is not giving the full credence and credit to people to be able to stand up for themselves. There should be no problem with it. And you, as somebody that might look like me, should have no problem feeling a part of that movement or wanting to be involved and to stand up for your fellow humans and do what's right. And it's funny because everybody talks about the other side of the other hashtag, justice or else. What is the or else? Everybody assumes it's violence. Everybody assumes it's a hateful perspective. Google the full 6 hours from Saturday. Be an intelligent adult and be able to decipher through which messages hit home that you agree with, which ones don't. But point out to me where anything was said that was inciting a race war or given instruction to attack white people. It's not what it's about. I focus on one thing: inclusion. Inclusion over exclusion. If my people, over hundreds of years, made the mistake of exclusion, and now as we try to fix it, we preach exclusion, then the same mistake is being made. And repeating those mistakes is considered insanity. All I talk about is love and truth. And if you focus on those two concepts, then you have to ask yourself some pretty intense questions about what you believe and how you see the world. White privilege exists. This system of white supremacy has been maintained and established for a long time, way before our lifetimes. But we're living in a beautiful time where my generation and the one after it, we see differently than you. We don't look at things like they've been looked at for so long. And whether it be because of music or a culture or social media or the ability for these things to fly in the rapid transformation of information into things that people can tangibly read and spread amongst each other, we're not under a system where it can be incubated so people don't understand what these systems are, how they've been used as tools and mechanisms to keep us apart. Whether you talk about the 1%, white supremacy, doesn't matter. We're all talking about that small piece of society that really makes things go, the ones that have the power, what's their biggest fear? Isn't it an overwhelmingly larger number of us than them? Isn't power always in numbers? They want us to be at each other's necks. They want us to be fighting. They want us to focus on the differences. They want us to look at each other and find everything that we see wrong with each other's culture because of the color of their skin or communities. They want that. We can't give it to them. But when we all sit behind keyboards and look at things from a distance and focus on the problems at the very top level, so people can call each other thugs, or look how they react, or why do people riot, or any plethora of things, we focusing on the wrong issues. No, not all white people are bad. No, not all cops are bad. Nobody says that. I'm sure there's a lot of police officers across this country who really give a damn about the job they do. You think they're happy? I would imagine not. I can't act like this doesn't bother me to the core of my body. I can't front like it's the biggest problem that we face as people in this world today. Because of the way society's been structured for so long, we didn't know any better. And we couldn't uplift each other and help each other out and spread information that underneath of it all, man, our heart is the same color. We breathe the same way, we cry the same way, we feel pain the same way, we die the same way. So before your initial reaction, which, mind you, is probably based off conditioning that you may not even be subconsciously aware of. It might be a subconscious thing. But because of your conditioning, you read hashtags and you experience fear. You think the worst. White people have been conditioned to fear black people. Black people have been conditioned to distrust white people, fear the systems that we've created. Let's just call it what it is, man. Put it all on the table. Let's look at the plate. But as long as you sit here together, as long as we at the same table, we can go through that food. Some of it doesn't taste good, but we'll get through it. But if we sit at the end of a long 50-foot table and we don't eat together and we don't break bread together and we can't find that common ground to sit, to talk these issues out and move forward, then we lost. We're gonna need each other. We have to be inclusive. We can't exclude one, select this one and not the other. It's funny, I think about what it's gonna be like in 100 years when we're all brown. And the problems that it's really convenient to say aren't necessarily mine. What happens when they're everybody's? What happens when the inner cities look the same as the suburbs? What happens when corporate America looks the same as ghetto America? And everybody's problems are each other's. Will they get a little more focus? Will people care to march and stand up for those issues a little bit more? I like to think so. But the truth is, when these older racist generations die out, it's going to be us left. And I can't wait to show you how much different we are than what's come before.